world just like me. You could be the chairwoman and I'll be the trustee. Let me give all to your benefit. Then I'll get blessed on my deficit.
Hi, I'm Tangiel Johnson, and I am your host for Your Corporate IQ.
And I'm your co-host, Lashez Solage.
Lashez, it's that time again. Are you ready?
Yes, I have my pearls. I'm
You,
ready. I'm
you,
ready.
you got your pearls? Okay, girl, you got your pearls, but do you have your heels ready? If we remember our theme song, which is Q-Tip's heels, high, low, or even open toe, get your heels on, girl. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, I'm just checking. Kel, you ready?
I'm ready. Now I
Okay.
can't speak to the heels, but I am ready.
Well, that's how we do it when we get ready to go to work, and we getting ready to go to work. So before we start, there is a disclaimer I want to give out to the audience, and that is that the views expressed by your corporate IQ and our guests today are our own views, and they do not reflect the views of any company or organization. And with that said, thanks for joining us here at your Corporate IQ podcast, where we will discuss the pearls and the perils of corporate America through the lens of people of color. And today's segment is on how to plan your exit strategy. And today's guest has approximately 20 plus years in HR across multiple industries, disciplines. She's been an HR generalist. She's been a manager. She's been a director. She's been a consultant, just doing her thing in HR. And now she's doing her own thing, her own way, because her title is I'm just a chick that loves real estate. So she didn't just transitioned all of those wonderful HR skills over into real estate. And we are really excited to hear from this pioneering consultant who always starts with a plan, the illustrious Kelly Rambo with Area West Realty. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're excited you're here.
I am too.
Yeah, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, we're super excited to have you here and sharing your experiences with us. We're going to delve into some questions, but first, I'd like to start off with walking us through your journey. That's what we all want to hear. Your career in HR and then your transition into entrepreneurship.
Okay. Well, I don't know how other people start in HR, but I will say my career in HR began from a childhood friend who now is also in real estate, who told me, "Oh, you'd be good in HR." And I remember this was at my mom's house. We were sitting in the family room, and I said, "I do not want to sit and listen to people's problems, because that is not my thing." So 20 plus years later, clearly I made a transition. So yeah, I guess I didn't know enough. I was in my 20s and I didn't know enough about HR to even really develop an opinion. So when she said that, I really put it out of my mind. I think I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I think I might have been at that time. So, I was one of those lovely college students that they recruit and, work you to the bone and, but you learn a lot. So it was there that I decided, I was like, and actually it was somebody that came into the branch that recruited me to work at a staffing agency. And I hadn't thought about a staffing agency before, and I just took a chance. And it was a huge chance because by the time I left Enterprise, the money was pretty good. So I was like, oh, you want me to make what? I was like, I don't know. And I just bought this house. I don't know about this, but it worked out. It worked out.
Mhm.
So from there, I just kind of went on to various roles. I found that I did like human resources a lot, and just had some great opportunities throughout my career. I worked in casinos for a while, and just it was great. I really started out as more of a specialist. I started out in recruiting. So from the employment agency, I transitioned to recruiting, and then started to go into more generalist roles. So it wasn't until really actually until Las Vegas that after leaving the which was it? It was Bally's, and I went over to Caesars, and that's when kind of my generalist role started. But I do have to say, at Bally's, I ended up leaving. Well, when I left recruiting, I ended up being the employee relations manager. That
Oh,
exact thing that I told my girlfriend I did not want to do. So I ended up doing that. But here's the best part. I loved it. I loved, I mean, I'm one of those people that recruiting is fine, talent acquisition is fine, it's happy. I liked the problems and the problem solving. And I will not bore you with the sordid details of what kind of employee relations issues come up in a casino in Las Vegas. Just know that it's not always the normal. It can be some of anything, but it was fun. It was really great, and it really gave me an opportunity to see a different side. So I think that's what led me to stay in HR so long. Because by that time I was like, oh, it isn't always rainbows and and sunshine. Hey, I can do this part. So unfortunately, the best part of that experience though, it led me to do a lot of reductions in force and
Hmm.
a lot of, what I guess most people know as layoffs or, separations. And I think the experience there gave me such thick skin. It was like, hey, you know what? They love me while I'm working for them, but when I no longer serve a purpose, they are going to see my way to the door. And it's not personal. It's just we don't have a need for you. It's no different than throwing out a piece of clothing that you just no longer like. Just because you loved it when you bought it in 1984 doesn't mean you still love it in 2023. I
or
mean,
you love it
or
and you
you should
can't
love
fit
it.
it.
Yeah, look,
Yes.
yes, that,
Yes.
that just means prosperity has taken over, and therefore your size has expanded with your prosperity. But yeah, so I just had, I mean, it was good because it gave me that experience, to really start
Hmm.
to look at things differently and say, okay, I know that this will last as long as it will last, but when it's no longer time for me to be here, I'll move on, either by my will or their will. And either way is
Awesome.
okay.
Awesome. Awesome. And
Sure.
we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that because I think it's really important, that part of your experience. I'm going to have some questions like around that for you. It's really important. One thing I do want to say though is what's very similar about us. I also started my career with enterprise, so that's amazing. Then I also started
Yay!
in staffing as well. So we've kind of followed similar footsteps. But where my part
There you
stopped is
go.
where you went into HR generalist and I stayed in recruitment. But really similar to start. I thought that was interesting. And then, Tangiel too was in staffing, started her career in staffing as well. So all three of us have something that we share.
Sure.
Yes, yes. It's, I liken staffing to the happy part of HR because at the end of it, somebody gets a job. So it's always happy. You
Sure.
know, now employee
That's me.
relations is kind of the exact opposite. At the end of it, somebody may not have a job,
Yes.
but sometimes they're good situations, sometimes they're not so good. I think the key is how we rebound from them. You can't
Sure.
be married to a situation at a job, because that's
Yeah.
where you're deemed
Yeah.
to be you're determined to be disappointed. If you're
Yes.
married to what outcome you see, you're going to be disappointed because one day they're not going to give you the raise you want. One day they're not going to promote you when you thought you should have been promoted. They're going something as simple as moving your office. I no longer have an office with the window. So you have to have something other than what that company provides to lean on. So
Perfect. I mean, that was going
that's
to be
my
my
take.
That's right.
segue. You're like reading my mind, Kelly. You're like reading my mind. My question was going to be for someone that's processed so many exits, as you said, AKA terminations, AKA layoffs, um, what you learned from that experience. So you've shared some of that with us, some of the things that you learned there. Maybe also talk a little bit about how you were able to help, or did you help those individuals that you were processing these terminations for? What kind of path did you take with that? So what you learned and also how you were able to help others in that particular transition.
So um, that's a great question. I don't think anyone has ever asked me that. I think, the way, at least I hope the way I was able to help is really by sharing a part of myself. Now, I will say, while I was doing these riffs, I had never been riffed before. So I had never
Okay.
had the experience personally at that time.
Hmm.
Now, I since have, but at that time, I hadn't had that experience. But I knew that there had to be something else out there. So what I would share with them oftentimes is, look at this as an opportunity. We all have something that we want to do, or that we would do if time allowed. If you ask anybody, if money or time was not a factor, what would you do? Not many of us would say work the job that we're working.
Right.
Some of us would, because some people truly love what they do. And some of us I think more of us fall in the I truly love aspects of what I do. I may not necessarily like the environment as much. I may not necessarily like this certain task. So then the question is, what would you take from it? And how are you going to leverage this opportunity? This is not a negative. Yeah, it's stopping this paycheck from this company, but you were looking for a job when you found this one. So clearly you're employable, so I've always been kind of that real basic communicator. I don't need to use lofty language. Bottom line is, what are you going to do today? So I would share that with people. Some places, depending on where it was and the type of riff it was, I've given preparation courses, lunch and learns and things like that to say, okay, how are you going to pivot from this? Do you want to stay within the company? This is your opportunity to leave with no shame. I mean, if you've been, don't complain about the job and then, fall to your knees when I say you get laid off. Oh Lord, my job. No, don't do that. I mean, this is an opportunity to take that and pivot.
Right.
But I think so. So those are some of the ways. Again, to your question, some of them were more formal than others, but there was
Right.
always an opportunity for me to talk to people usually and say, is this really what you want to do? Do you want to stay with this company? This is the time. Let's look at you have severance. I'm a big proponent of financial literacy. So this is your chance. If you're going to get paid for this amount of time, what are you going to do to set yourself up for what's next? Do you have time to move into a different opportunity that might pay less than you're used to being paid so that you can explore that? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's those are just some of the things, but it was really more conversations. There wasn't always a formal opportunity to help them, see to the next. And then in full transparency, some don't want to hear a word you have to say once you tell them they've lost their job.
That's
Sure.
right.
Some people are,
Sure.
because it's emotional. They're not at that time. You can't tell me about moving on. Right now, I'm just thinking about the mortgage, the groceries, the daycare, the school tuition. There is nothing you can say to me about what's next. What's next is I got a bill due in 2 days. That's what's next. And I'm trying to
Right. I
figure out
understand that.
things that I had taken for granted. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to pivot. Yeah. So it all comes down to readiness. So if a person is ready to
Mm-hmm.
hear, I'm always willing to share, but I've never really pushed, hey, you should be happy, you have an opportunity. I mean, it is, but you may not be ready for that.
That's
I, you
right.
know, I like everything you said about
That's good.
that. I think what I like about what you did is that You assess their readiness, first of all, to receive that information. I think that we always have to do that, right? We have to assess, is a person willing and able to
Yeah.
understand what you're trying to convey, and then make a decision in terms of, is it worthwhile to share that, right? Because it can backfire on you. So just assessing that is good. And also
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you took the time to do that. So a lot of HR professionals, not
Mm-hmm.
everyone's going to take that approach to consult these associates or employees that are being terminated. You could have simply taken the process of just, I'm going to just process these terminations, which I think a lot of people take that path. You did something
Yeah.
different. You actually chose to
Yeah.
try to help those individuals in a situation that you said you never encountered yourself. So that's also speaks highly to you, right? It's not even something that you can say, hey, from a personal experience, I'm able to share how I did X, Y, and Z. You really had to feel a certain sense of responsibility to do so, to even come outside of yourself and try to help them with something you've never faced yourself. So I appreciate HR professionals like that come beyond the transactional work that they're doing to understand the human components to HR, and that does exist in HR, and you've proven that that's
Yeah.
the case.
Yeah. I think I would like to think there are more people out there like me than not like me in that sense. Um, I hope. I'm not going back into corporate to experience it, to figure it out, but I just hope that there are.
There's a few out
So
there, Kelly.
Okay.
yeah, for sure. So what was your exit strategy from corporate? How did you kind of begin that transition? And even with the lens of, if you want to piggyback on what you kind of learned from that kind of layoffs and pivot strategy that you were kind of sharing with others, how was that included in your transition and your strategy as you exited and moved into entrepreneurship?
Okay, so for starters, I am very much a planner. This is probably something that I plan the least, um, which is crazy, but it is the way. So for me, real estate is something that once I began to understand it, I didn't come from a family of investors. Some people have the benefit of having parents that had rental homes or grandparents. I didn't have any of that. My parents had the house they bought, and that was the end. I can't think of anybody in my family that has even one rental property. So it was just something that was so foreign. I didn't have like the natural support. You hear somebody, oh, my dad had rentals, so I, had some. And now that I think of it, I have an uncle that had rentals, but he lived in Kansas City, and I grew up in Detroit, so it wasn't like I was seeing what it took to have, to even participate in real estate. And um, so I think that was always in the back of my mind. So it wasn't really part of an exit strategy. Well, let me say there wasn't timing really attached to that exit strategy. It was something that I always wanted to do. I would take one of my line sisters out with me to look at houses, and they were pretty in rough condition, like no floors. And she would say, "Girl, there's no floors in here," So it was, even while I was working, it was something that I was always interested in. So it wasn't like
Right.
a pivot to something totally foreign to me. It was like, hey, it was always there. And so basically what happened is I finally decided, I was like, after, 20 years of threatening to get licensed, I'm going to get licensed. Now, I had already had a rental. I had already bought a house to rent. I had a condo that I was renting. So I was already kind of in the space. But I decided I would study for the real estate exam, and I'm going to do this. I don't think I'd planned to do it full time at that time because I thought I'd continue working and do it. But, it just so happened that I left my job, and it was like February of 2018. My daughter was born in November of 2017. So, and I had happened to start the class right at Thanksgiving break. So I started the class. So in February, when, my job went away, I was like, well, cool. Now I mean, I've gone back to work. So I already found, you have certain things in place. My daughter was already at a center. I wasn't about to take her out. I mean, yeah, I could have saved a little money, but at the end of the day, I was going to have to do something. And I was like, what better time to, dive into real estate? So, I will say that at my entry did not have a strategy. I did have a strategy when I went back into real estate full time. So, so fast forward to I did real estate full time for about 7 months. And then a friend of mine called and asked me to take this temporary HR job. And since I do like to eat, I do like to pay my bills, it was like, yeah, I can do that. So I'm thinking, I'll do that for about 3 months. I'll do that about 3 months. And yeah, 3 months turned into 2 years. Um, but I'm still doing real estate. So I'm leaving here, going to show houses, or look, I'm gonna take off this time because I got to go to a closing. I mean, it was madness, trying to work, you know, be a mom, I don't know how good I'm doing the wife thing, but do that too, and and sell real estate. So I'll just say something suffered. I'm not sure which, but one of them suffered. Because you can't do it all. But
Right.
so
That's right.
when after getting into this temporary job that lasted 2 years, when I got to the beginning of the second year, I said, you know what? I need a strategy to not do this. I don't like being split. One, don't like being captive. I don't like having to coordinate just to do the stuff that I really love to do. So I need to
Right.
do something to make this sustainable. So that's when I started. The first thing I did is I changed my direct deposit. I was storing away, I was like a squirrel with nuts. I was storing away as much money as I could because my plan, my mental plan was I want to be able to live for a year without a closing. So if I don't close
Yes.
anything, if I am horrible at real estate and I close not one deal, I want to know that I can still make it for 12 months. So
Yes.
that's kind of what I focused on. The one thing because I had read and saw videos about, oh, you need to be prepared. You need to have 3 months of expenses. You need to have, first of all, I think all that's a crock. There is no formula because everyone's situation is different. Everyone's
That's
motivation
right.
is different.
That's right.
So my situation, yeah, I mean, there's no hard and fast rule. My situation is that my husband is a retiree from Fulton County, so he carries our benefits. So, somebody else may have a totally different situation. I
That's
didn't
right.
have to
That's right.
think about where medical is coming from. I don't, yeah, I know what it's going to cost. I don't have to think
Thank
about
you.
that for my
Yes.
family. So I could focus on something else. So knowing that all I had to do was replace the income from this temporary job, I'm like, well, if I'm not getting any, and keep in mind, you HR people know I said temporary. So I didn't have any contribution to retirement. I was on the payroll, so they were contributing to Social Security. But other than that, all I was getting was a paycheck from this place. So I'm like, if that's it, that's just replacing the money. So let's replace the money.
Yes.
So
I
that's
love this.
when you break down what you're actually getting. Now it is different if I had a full-time job and maybe I was responsible for medical. I had to figure out, okay, where am I going to get the medical from? Where am I going to get? I didn't
Right.
have that to do. So I think the average person or anybody listening to this, when they're trying to figure out what to do, make sure you know everything that your current employment provides.
Yes.
Now, does that
Yes.
mean you need all of those things? You may not. But know what they provide and know what you're actually losing. I think one mistake people make is they think of the money only, and
Yes.
then they're sitting there like, oh, I didn't know that Cobra was going to be $1,800 a month. Yeah,
That's
yeah, you
right.
didn't know. So, and that's a huge miss for most people. Is health
Yes.
insurance because it
Yeah,
it it
understanding
it
your
costs so much
situation.
more than right. And so once you know what you need, then your exit strategy should be built out of those things. So if
Right.
I
That's
know
right.
I need to replace retirement, so I still needed to replace retirement. So I opened up a individual 401k, so that I can contribute because
Yes.
I still need, I'm not as close to retirement as I like to be. Now, you might see the gray hair and it might tell you that, I might be closer, but my wallet says I'm not as close as I'd like to be. So therefore I need to save for retirement.
Right.
What
So
I like
it's really comes down to doing those things.
Awesome. What I like about everything that you've said, if I can unpack everything, is, it's real, right? So it's not this kind of perfect shiny strategy on the front end. We did eventually get to a strategy, and you were very effective at explaining what that was. But what I like about the beginning of this journey was that the first part of it was not a strategy there, because that is a real thing that our listeners will face. So you were presented with, and you understood it as an opportunity, right? Just as you tried to share with the other associates or employees, is that you have to identify it as or look at it as an opportunity. And you understood that about yourself. So there was no strategy there, but you understood the opportunity and took steps to move into something that you started to do when you were working. So what I got from that is while you're working, really invest in yourself, really try to have some other things outside of work that you enjoy doing so that when that opportunity, as it did here, presents itself, you can kind of pivot into those things and then create the plan that you created later on. And I love that you said you have to understand your situation. There's not a one size fits all. Everyone's situation is different. Understand the total package that you were offered in that previous position and understand how you're going to replace those things to make sure that your basic needs are being met as you transition into doing something else, whether it's another company or entrepreneurship. Fundamentally, those things have to be met, and you have to understand your total compensation first and foremost to understand that transition, if I got that right.
Absolutely, Lachez. I think the biggest thing you brought up total compensation, and I almost forgot about this, but if you're, if somebody's listening and they're thinking about leaving, if you can get a current total compensation statement from your employer, that's a valuable tool to have. Most
Mm.
people just kind of ignore it because you think you're going to be employed forever until you decide you're not. But you don't know, there's two people in that relationship, so you don't know who's going to make the decision first. But if you have that total comp statement, it even helps if you're going to another job. So maybe entrepreneurship is not for you. If you're going to
Right.
another job, if you know what you had, you're less likely to jump at the first thing that comes and then be frustrated because it doesn't meet the needs that you thought it was going to meet. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can look at that
Mm.
and say, okay, this is worth this, and this. So when they tell me they're offering me A, B, and C, I can match it up and say, no, 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 not the job for me. Or yes, yes, yes. It's better because just because you lose a job doesn't mean you should move into desperation mode. I know that's our natural inclination, but you shouldn't necessarily move into desperation mode because you're going to make those types of decisions. So
Yes.
if you have details that you can go back to and say, let me think about this. It looks shiny and new, but I hear that people that leave here are cuckoo. So let me not go where it's crazy. Let me pass on this and go somewhere else.
Right.
I love that. I love that. Are there any transferable skills from HR that you've kind of taken with you into your current business?
I would say yes. I think the first is listening. And it's that active listening. It's listening for what people don't say, as much as what they do say. I work with clients that have all different types of situations. Some are first time buyers, some are investors, some are first time investors, some are move up buyers, some are retirees, some are veterans. I mean, every situation, just like I mentioned, can be different. So when you listen to what they say, I give this example once of one client that she told me, she's like, Kelly, we need to downsize. We just have too much space. It's just the two of us. We are getting ready for retirement. We need something smaller. So they were selling their 3,100 square foot house so they could buy a 3,100 square foot house. But the truth of the matter, it's lifestyle. So that house, the previous house was more for a family. It had 2 floors and all bedrooms were upstairs. So what you're really doing is buying lifestyle. But once you know that, you know, although she kept saying to me, we need smaller, we need something smaller. Well, they didn't get anything smaller. They got something, and actually, if I were exact on the square footage, it might even be a little bit bigger.
Wow.
Um, it's definitely at least the same size. So, but the layout fit their lifestyle, and
Right.
that's the biggest thing, So she never said we want this, but I was listening to what she said about we're planning for
Mm,
retirement. We need to,
yes.
we need to downsize. What we really needed to do is right size for retirement. And I think that applies to real estate and other things. You need to right size for retirement.
Wow. Look, Tangiel, this reminds me of recruitment so much, or talent acquisition. That hiring manager is talking about they want X, Y, and Z candidate and
Right.
so on and so forth. And with that active listening, you understand you actually need this over here, not that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah,
the
they
same
always want
thing.
X,
Here.
Y, and Z
Yes.
until the referral comes.
That's
Once
right.
the referral comes from somebody they really like, oh, this person is going to be great. I'm like, they have none of the skills you're looking for. Oh, but it's okay because I know the person that referred them.
Yes.
Like, okay.
And it actually goes, ladies, the opposite way of when you're talking to a candidate who says they want a job, right? They want this, they want that. And then when you find out, what their skills are just from a conversation, you're like, no, that's not what you really want or what you really need for that matter. So,
Right.
yeah,
This
Yes.
is more
that,
pipe
that
dream.
yeah, that probably explains why so many people in recruiting and HR transfer into real estate. It makes all the sense in the world if it's that similar.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the key skill. You asked for skills plural. I think the other one would definitely be administrative skills because what people see when they're buying a house, they see their agent meeting them at a house to open the door and show to them, and that's the biggest part of what they see. But the other part is I need to negotiate. I need to make sure I'm preparing your offer correctly. Make sure I have all the information from your lender that you can actually buy this house. We're not just playing, so there's a heavy amount of administrative work that I think people don't always take into consideration with real estate. I mean, I've talked to people that, and you hear them say, I was thinking about getting into real estate because I love looking at houses. I was like, yeah, you love it because it's not a job. It's, I mean, if this is what you have to do every day, you're like, I don't know if I love it like I used to because I'm tired. You still have to
Hmm.
get there. You have to schedule it. You have to, it's not just show up at a house and walk in. You got to schedule it. You got to make sure it fits. You got to make sure it's available. I mean, there's other steps. So that's the part that nobody usually wants to do.
Awesome. What are you kind of most proud of in this work, whether it's your current work or, just in your total career, whether it was HR or the current work that you're doing? What are you the most proud of?
Hmm. You know, if I had to pick overall, I'm most proud of, I guess, my ability to pivot in and out.
Mm,
But if I had to tell one story that I'm most proud of, it would have to be, at least in HR, it would have to be in employee relations, what I was fighting. Um, I had a gentleman that, this is in Las Vegas, and he had moved out there from somewhere in the Midwest, and he had developed a gambling problem, and it was affecting him coming to work, and he was missing work. So we were about to terminate him, and um, I'd met with him that morning, and I said, okay, well, come back at 1. I just had to make sure I had his paycheck ready and everything. So I had him come back at 1 o'clock, and just so happened the way my office was situated, I had a back door. So I would go out the back door when I went to lunch, just in case somebody was waiting on me. They didn't see me go by and they're sitting there waiting. So I just go out the back door. So I went out the back door, came, went to eat, came back, and I came back and something was in a file that I needed. So I ended up going out the front door. It's like 12:20 and he's in my lobby. And I'm like, he's here already. I said 1 o'clock, and he stops me and he was like, um, Miss Kelly, I don't know what you are gonna do, but if you don't fire me, I'm quitting. I have a problem. I can't live in Las Vegas, and I need to go back home. I've called, I've called my family. They're sending me a bus ticket, and I'm on my way back to wherever in the Midwest. So the part of the story I forgot is when I talked to him earlier, he was like, Las Vegas is just different. I just can't get settled here. And I'd almost forgot this. I told him, I said, it doesn't matter where you are. You have to be settled in here before you can be settled out here. If you're not settled within yourself, none of this matters. So you have to be settled here first. And that's what he reminded me that really made the difference for him. He said, when you said that, it changed everything for me. I
Wow.
immediately called my family, and I guess he, hadn't been talking to them much because, things had not been good. And he said, I immediately called my family. They sent me a ticket. So I'm just telling you now, if you don't fire me, I'm quitting because I have to go. This place is not for me. And you helped me see that, and I appreciate it. So that's probably one of my proudest moments because I truly forgot I had said that to him in the hour since he had left. Tells you where my brain is. But I attribute things like that to nothing but God. For me, that was God speaking because I didn't even remember I said it until he reminded me. And if it were coming from me, I would have remembered. But I remember because I've been proud, but yeah. So that has to be one of my proudest moments.
Awesome. So
I'm
what do you wish
getting
someone would have?
something.
Oh, you have one? You have something?
I'm getting something. Something's hitting my brain right now. So earlier on, when you said you did not want to fix other people's problems, but yet once you delved in, that's exactly what you were doing. Well, I know you personally. This is one of the folks in my network, and Kelly is a coach by
Yes.
nature. Right. And so for those of you that are in HR and you do enjoy employee relations, there's a coach somewhere inside of you because that's really what that is.
Yeah,
You
Mm-hmm.
coached
yeah.
that gentleman and others, including me, numerous times, and we haven't even worked together. It's just
That
what
is
you
true.
do, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it just hit me. I'm like, okay, this is what she's doing. She's coaching.
Over and over
You make a
again.
good point.
She's demonstrated that over and over again with her approach to things, right? When she said that,
Right.
hey, I've never been laid off, but what did you do? You chose to coach people, right? You could have just processed, but you chose to coach. Same thing with this gentleman.
Yeah.
You could have just terminated him, right? He's not doing what he's supposed to do. You could have been very transactional in your HR work, which a lot of people are. You chose to coach that gentleman and help him to get back
Yeah.
on track. So
Love it.
over and over again, that skill is there. That's what you do.
Applause. Applause
Thank
all
you.
the way around.
Thank you. I saw it when you said it, Tangel, but I guess I never thought much about it because I like certain coaching things. I do.
I do. I do.
I like, but I feel like it's just part of paying my debt for being on the earth.
Hmm.
It's something I'm supposed to do. If I have some knowledge, what good is it to go in the grave with me?
That's it.
Yes, that's right.
You
That's right.
know?
Not everybody's like that, Kelly. That's the thing. Just know that that's something different, right?
Well, thank
And
you.
that's why we have your corporate IQ, so that we make sure that everyone listening understands what it means to be in corporate. Whether you
Yeah.
are thinking of entering, whether you're in and you're trying to navigate, or you're trying to exit. That is the value of this podcast, and we are applauding you again because you're taking us through it. You're showing us how it's done. I love it.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And
Thank
so with that, final question is, what do you wish someone would have shared with you early in your
you.
career?
Oh. I think the first thing I wish somebody would have shared to me is help me understand loyalty.
Hmm.
And by that, I mean, you have advice or things you hear from people, and they say, oh, companies aren't loyal. You got to be loyal to the company. No, depending on what generation you're from and what your exposure is, you have different perspectives of loyalty. I wish someone had shared with me my best loyalty is to myself and always be loyal to myself. Um,
Yes.
because I think there have been times I've wasted time wanting the job to be more suitable for me, as
Mm.
opposed to saying it's suitable for me in this time.
That's it.
Because there's a difference between a job being suitable for you from here on out and a job being suitable for you for what is today. And if you have a higher degree of loyalty to yourself, it's so much easier to recognize. I mean, you're more like a duck and the water rolls off your back. And you're like, oh, that's what we're doing. Okay, so we're no longer doing it that way. Okay, no problem. You can shift easier if
Yes.
you are loyal to yourself. And
That's right.
and you have less disappointment, I believe. I think I've
Yes.
experienced, disappointment in corporate environments because I thought that my loyalty would be rewarded in a way that it was not.
Awesome. I
And
love that.
where
I
I
love that.
I should have focused on, hey, we're both serving a purpose for each other. I'm giving you what you need right now, and you're giving me what I need right now. But one
Right.
day, you will not be able to give me what I need. So
That's right.
therefore, I am going to prepare for what is next so I can get what I need.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's a better way to understand the corporate environment. It might seem
Yeah.
harsh, it might seem rough, like the concept of humans being resources is very real. But if you understand it in this
Hmm.
way, in terms of understanding loyalty to yourself, it softens that, right? It softens a
Hmm.
concept that is very hard for, I would imagine, our listeners to understand, but understanding it in the context of being loyal to yourself, and that it's a mutually beneficial situation that you are in. The employer
That's
is
Right.
it.
looking towards you as a resource, and you also need to look at that employer as a resource to you, being loyal to yourself. What is it that you're looking to get in the time that you're there? They're doing the same exact thing with you. So it's the best way to be when you're in a corporation, right?
Love it. Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Wonderful.
This
Well,
was
Kelly, share the best
phenomenal.
way for our yeah, share the best way for our listeners to get in contact with you, Kelly.
Well, I'm in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and they can reach me on my website, kellyrambo.com. I am on Facebook and Instagram, if I can't say it. I am on both of those,
I-
and as Rambo Sells Real Estate.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Well, thank you for
Really
having
appreciate
me.
that.
This has been so fun. I can't wait to
Oh,
come.
good. I was gonna say you gotta come back. We'll have another topic for you for sure.
Well, look, I'm coming back anyway, so hopefully you invite me and I don't have to crash.
Well, just
I,
make sure you bring your pearls and your heels to the podcast.
Okay. Yes. I
All
gave up
right.
heels and I gave up corporate, so I can manage the pearls and I may have to find some heels.
Well, in the words of Q-Tip now, let me just take you back. He said high, low, or even open toe. Put your heels
Okay
on.
then.
All right.
Okay. Oh, I got the toes open. It's summertime here, so I got the toes open.
Love it. Well, Kelly, thank you again. This is awesome. For all of our listeners, remember to stay tuned for more episodes of Your Corporate IQ. We're interested in hearing from you. Please send us your topics,
please.
suggestions, or comments. We can be reached at info@yourcorporateiq.com. Like us and engage with us also on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and now LinkedIn. Thanks again, and until next time, see ya.
Tune in.
High, low, close or open toe. You be looking good when you rock 'em, so put your heels on, girl. Them heels on, lady. Hit your ground hard, you drive me crazy. Palms get sweaty, I'm imagining things. When I see what reality brings, I get choked from your vision of comparable. So dumb, man, I could write a parable. Killing when I go back to my rat hole living. Michelangelo, you on the ceiling.